Welcome to the Manager Lab, where we delve into the increasingly dynamic world of talent management. In each episode, we will unravel key insights, break down the most relevant books and articles, and provide actionable tips to optimize your approach in developing and retaining top talent. Stay tuned for a deep dive into the art, science, and strategy of unlocking your team's full potential. Let's enter the Manager Lab. Most managers don't struggle with strategy. They struggle with getting people to buy into the strategy. You explain the plan, you clarify expectations, you follow up, and still execution is inconsistent. According to John C. Maxwell and the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the issue often isn't clarity, it's connection. His principle is simple. Leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. So let's make that practical. What does connection actually look like in a normal workday? And how do you build it without adding more meetings or more complexity? So segment 1 of the chapter says what connection really means. Connection at work isn't about being charismatic or overly personal. It comes down to 3 outcomes. People feel heard, people feel understood, and people feel considered. When those are missing, you'll notice that you often have to repeat yourself. People agree in meetings but don't follow through. Feedback gets pushback and engagement drops. At that point, most managers push harder on accountability. But a better move is to step back and ask, where am I not connecting with my people? Because weak connection shows up as weak execution. And here's where managers typically miss the mark. Connection usually breaks down in predictable ways. So you start one-on-ones with status instead of context. You jump to solutions before fully understanding the problem, or you communicate decisions without involving people in the thinking. All of that feels efficient, but it creates distance. And over time, distance reduces trust. So here's a simple interaction model, a practical way that you can use in almost any conversation. It's called the pause, ask, reflect, then lead. So pause so that you don't default to fixing things immediately. Ask 1 or 2 open-ended questions. Reflect back on what you heard, then lead with direction or decisions. Most managers skip the reflect step altogether. That's the real gap. When people feel understood, i.e., you're reflecting back what you heard them say, your leadership lands much more efficiently. So there's a tool that the article talks about called the one-on-one connection map. Let's make this operational. So instead of running one-on-ones as status updates, structure them in 3 parts. Number 1, the personal, the first 3 to 5 minutes. How's your week been? What's been taking the most energy lately? Number 2, gain some perspective. What's been frustrating or slowing you down? Where do you feel stuck? Take, 5 or 10 minutes to go through those types of things. And then the remainder you can talk about performance. What are your priorities? Here's some feedback that I've heard, or follow up on projects. This works because you build context before you manage execution. And over time, you start to see patterns. What motivates each person, where they struggle, and how they think. So the simple habit here is to keep a short note for each team member. What motivates them? What are their current challenges? What are their career goals? And then review it before every one-on-one. And that alone will noticeably improve your connection. Tool number 2 that the article talks about is something called Name It, Frame It, Ask It. The second tool here is for real-time conversations. So especially when there's tension or hesitation or lack of clarity. The name it, step 1, name it, call out what you're observing neutrally. So you might say something like, it seems like there's some hesitation around this plan. Am I reading that correctly? Number 2, frame it. Explain why it matters. So you might say, I want to make sure we address concerns early so this doesn't slow us down later. And then number 3, ask it. Invite their perspective. What's your take on this? And the reason this works is that it surfaces issues early without putting people on the defensive. You're not ignoring tension, and you're not forcing alignment. You're creating space for honest input. Now, let's connect these tools to everyday management moments. So I'll give you a couple of scenarios here. One is giving feedback. So instead of jumping in with your assessment, you might ask, how do you think that went? And then reflect. You felt good about the content, but rushed at the end. And then lead. Here's one adjustment I would suggest. So the result of that kind of approach is less defensiveness and more ownership from the person that you're giving the feedback to. Here's another scenario. Let's say around driving change. You might say, it seems like this timeline feels tight, and I want to make sure that we address risks early. What concerns do each of you have? The result there is that you get real input instead of surface level agreement. And then the last example here is around low engagement. Instead of asking, why isn't this done? Ask, what's making this hard to prioritize for us? Reflect on what you hear and then clarify expectations. And the result of that might be that you solve the actual issue, not just the symptom. So if you're improving connection, you'll start to notice people will speak up earlier. You hear about problems sooner. There's less rework. Follow through improves without constant reminders. And if those aren't happening, adding more pressure won't fix it. Improving connection will. So here's a straightforward way to apply this immediately. In your next few conversations, don't respond until you've reflected back on what you've heard. It will feel slightly slower. Yes, it will not feel quite so quick as you are normally used to, but it will dramatically improve how well you understand the situation and how well your response lands. The law of connection from John C. Maxwell isn't about being inspirational. It's about being effective. If people feel heard, understood, and considered, execution gets easier. So before you push harder on results, try this. Structure your one-on-ones with intention. Use the name it, frame it, and ask it in tough moments. And slow down long enough to reflect before you lead. Because in most teams, better connection isn't a nice to have. It's the difference between compliance and commitment. Well, thanks for listening. And until next time we meet in the Manager Lab, do good work.